Aye.
I'm guessing no opposed, minutes are approved. Okay, do we have any public comment tonight? I don't.
Are you
hear
talking about
any-
from the public?
I don't see any public on the list here tonight, so, okay. Uh, Item number 4 then, I update on the update and status on the water project. Ted was going to join us, but he is out of town tonight. And said, he said that he wouldn't be able to make it, or, he said he could if we need him, but we really didn't need him. So I asked him, not to worry about it, but, pretty much moving right along. I know they kind of took Easter week off to get some crews in place, and we're supposed to get started up full speed today. I haven't seen any activity, but I was only out just a little bit this morning. So I don't know if there was any activity going on today or not. Does anybody see anything?
I haven't seen anything today on it.
Okay, so I'll check with Corbett and see what's happening there.
There was, just real quick, there was, I don't know if it's Blue Stakes or one of those, they were out the other day on Lakeview. So, but they seem like they've done that like 12 times.
Yeah, they seem to be, they have to refresh them every, I think 14 days. And so they keep the tickets open to keep them refreshed so that they can go ahead and move on at any time they want. A lot of times, the utility locators will say, hey, we don't mind blue staking, but we want to, kind of just stay ahead of where you're working. We don't want to try and keep up with the whole project, but it looks like they're trying to do the whole project every 2 weeks. So they've been a lot, been a lot of blue stake activity. I've noticed that over the last, 6 months, excuse me. So anyway, I think we got June 1st is the actual completion date on the contract for the project. I know they were supposed to bring in crews and start doing some potholing so they can start doing the service connections this week. And I think they were going to be up on Broad Hollow and or Springs. Excuse me, up on Springs. So, but again, I haven't seen anybody. So we usually have a meeting on Wednesdays with Ted out of town. I don't know if we're having the meeting tomorrow or not to try and get an update on. So we'll see how that goes. I guess that's about all I have on that. Does anybody else have any other comments on the water project?
Nope.
So I don't know, my phone's really acting up weird here. I don't know what's going on. So apologize if I'm breaking up on you. If there's no more comment there, I'd like to go ahead and just a quick review of our discussions on the public works projects over the last couple of months. I know we kind of presented the list and everything. I don't know, I'm just kind of curious. David, you'd probably be the best to answer. How did we do budget-wise and stuff? I think the big thing we were concerned about was the safety.
Budget-wise on the road project?
Oh, there you are. Okay. Dave,
I think he's talking about the priorities, Dave, that we talked about a couple meetings ago: safety, a shed or a garage or something for some of the equipment, stuff like that. Did any of that make it into the budget?
We might have lost him.
I show him as
Okay.
being on.
So I'm barely able to hear you guys. You keep kind of breaking up. I'm not sure.
So Dave, we were just wondering on the budget discussion that the council had, did any of the items we discussed, did they get talked about or presented for the budget coming up for 2021? Our biggest concern was the safety portion of it.
Mark, he's no longer on the list. I'm assuming he's trying to back in again.
Okay.
But it was a good thought.
Okay, well, why don't we get back to Dave? If he joins us again, we'll get back to him. So I'll go ahead and just kind of put item number 4 on hold until we hear back. And then in the meantime, we had, I think everybody got that list I sent out about the potential public works, excuse me, yeah, about recommendations for road projects. And it looks like Dave has joined us again. Dave, you make it back?
Yeah, well, that was kind of weird because you guys were breaking up for me, and anyway, whatever. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you great now. You sound great.
Okay, so regarding the budget, we had our budget meeting. We talked through everything that was on the list that came from the Public Works Committee. The mayor still has to put together the budget, so she took those numbers and we'll see what she comes back with.
Okay, so nothing to report on that as of yet. Okay, appreciate that. Like I said, I think our biggest concern is, our number one priority on that was the safety. I'd at least like to see that get some attention this year.
Dave, can you tell us about the timeline? When do you expect the mayor to have a draft budget?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. So my expectation is that it'll be probably the second meeting in April. That's just my gut.
Okay.
We have to have it approved like the end of May. So, second week of April would be soon enough. What she's asked each of the council people to do is to kind of, she already gave us a draft budget. And I'll just tell everybody that in that draft budget, we were $200,000 over, which means we were going to take $200,000 out of savings in order to cover the budget. So clearly, there's some things in there that we may have to make some hard decisions on. But anyway, so we're supposed to send that to the mayor like this week, and she's supposed to digest it and then come up with the budget that she's going to propose to us.
Okay, and Dave, yeah, I think we were all aware that there was going to be a lot of demand on the budget this year. So we can just, put in what we feel we had, and, you guys on the council and the mayor especially, some tough decisions to make. So, hats off to you guys for being able and in position to make those decisions, because no matter what, it's going to be a tough one. So we understand that, or at least I do. I'm sure everybody else does as well.
Hey, Mark and David, I don't remember seeing this on the actual budget discussion, but recently I've noticed a couple of fairly large, not potholes in development on Woodland Hills Drive. And while a lot of other roads can get by with waiting a little bit, that's the main road that I don't think could wait on some projects that are coming up. Does anyone else notice that toward the bottom?
I've noticed that, and I'm disappointed because we just redid that road a couple of years ago.
To be honest, it looks like a weight-induced stress crack. We have a couple of those there on the right-hand side on the west lane going up into the city.
Yeah,
Someone
either
is-
weight induced or induced by not having it properly packed down before we laid the asphalt down.
Either one, and I don't remember seeing that on the list of projects to consider for the budget this year. But that's one thing I think probably really needs to be considered, given the main artery, section of the fact that it's main artery.
Excuse me, gentlemen, I was just going to move on to item number 5, which is discussion of potential public works road projects, or item 6, excuse me. And I was actually going to bring some of that up. So if we want to, we could go ahead and, clear out item number 5 and move on to item number 6, discussion of possible recommendations for road priorities.
Well, and can I just make one comment just so that y'all understand how the budget kind of works?
Sure thing.
So when it's little things like that, and I hate to call that a little thing, I'm not trying to minimize what you're bringing up, David. It's more, to us, that's more maintenance. And so we do have a budget for road maintenance. And that's what takes care of like the crack seal that we do. And then in certain places, we'll actually take out the asphalt and put in an asphalt square block or something like that. So we do have a budget for maintenance. I'm trying to look it up right now, actually, so that I can give you an actual number for it. Road improvements.
I'd be interested in knowing also what the balance is this year in that particular account.
Well, okay, so what you're talking about, which is a very good topic, Wayne, is the bond. So as far as funding sources for any amount that we do on roads, we have two funding sources. One comes from our, just think of it like our operations budget. And then the other comes from the bonds that we have gotten. We're trying to use the bond money for the bigger projects, the repaving of Broad Hollow, repaving of Spring, anyway, those roads that have been kind of messed up, although we're also going to get the 400,000 from the water fund, or the water loan will be increased by 400,000. So that should help with some of those roads. And then that gives us a little extra money to use on other things road wise. Our actual amount that we have this year is $30,000 for general maintenance. So that's, again, crack seal, any work that we pay for the boys to do during the summer. That's the 30,000, and that's what's been proposed.
Hey, Dave, excuse me, when you say 30,000, is that what's left? Because I think what Wayne was asking is how much of the actual money do we have left in the operational budget for 2020? And how much are we looking at for 2021? I think the 30K you just presented is the proposed 2021 budget.
It is,
And
and I don't have the,
I'm sorry.
I don't have the number for last year's budget, and I'd have to pull up a different document in order to see that, because this doesn't have the 2020.
So
It
yeah,
has
so-
what we've spent. We've spent 11,757.
Okay,
It
but-
doesn't have what the budget was.
So just, okay, so we'll call it, I'll round it up to 12,000 spent. And so we don't know how much was in the budget. So we don't know how much money we have left to spend in this year's budget. And then we still haven't approved next year's budget. Again, you had mentioned, the 200,000 shortfall that we have, is that 30K liable to change? And part of the discussion I wanted to bring up about that is, I did get some good feedback from everybody on possible uses for the extra. It's actually closer to 700,000 and 600,000 that we can spend out of the, it would be the bond and the budget that was set aside for road improvements. Big question I have, along with what Dave Peterson had just brought up, is, is that enough? Is there enough money left in the operating budget to do all that? Or might we want to discuss using some of the bond/road improvement budget to do Woodland Hills Drive? Is it going to be necessary? I think it's, something we would have to look at, depending on how much budget we have and how much we actually need. So that, I did want to make that part of the discussion tonight.
Yeah, I think again, that a part of it just depends on how much it's going to cost. And if you're, so just in the spirit of being able to move forward, what I think would be a better thing for the committee to do is just to work on the priorities. And I know I've said that before, so I'm not saying anything new, but if we know what the priorities are, then what we can do is we can have Corbett and others put together the actual cost estimate, what we think it's going to cost. And then we look at, okay, which projects can we actually do and which funding source are we going to use to do them?
So I agreed. I know that I talked to Corbett yesterday, and he said he was going to be on tonight. I don't know if he got busy, got sidetracked, or just simply forgot. That happens when you get too busy sometimes. But I know as we start talking about priorities, one of the items that he had brought to my attention is, we're going to go ahead and use the, I think there was an extra 400,000, that was going to be added to the the water project to complete a complete overlay of some of the roads. And that was actually going to be, the Oak Drive portion of it, Spring Drive and Broad Hollow. And his concern was on some of the cul-de-sacs coming off of Oak Drive, where we did a lot of equipment storage and parts storage and stuff like that, that a lot of that road got, just tore up by equipment. And was wondering, there's not going to be any budget left except for to do the road patches over the water line, and the rest of the road may be diminished to the point where it becomes unusable. So he was wondering about using some of that leftover bond money for doing, completing the cul-de-sac. So I know that was one priority that Corbett had. So I think we probably ought to put that on the list of priorities. The other thing that come up, and it was brought up, Jeremy, I believe you kind of talked a little bit about it, is the Bear Hollow situation. I was not aware of that at all until last week, until it was brought up in the email chain. I'm not quite sure exactly. I've been trying to find out a little bit about it, but my understanding is that we had a bond in place to complete Bear Hollow. The developer went broke. It didn't complete it. We called the bond and we have, I believe, $133,000 into the account to complete Bear Hollow. The question was, is that part of the bond money, or is that separate from what we've already budgeted for the bond? I did send an email to Chris to try and get an answer to that question, and have not heard back from him on that. Is anybody in a position to enlighten me on that, or enlighten the committee on that?
I don't have that information.
So that,
I don't, Mark,
yes,
my recollection a bit and understanding is that there is no money there. Because when there was talk about doing that, there was no discussion about tapping into any kind of reserve bond fund left over from previous construction. The city was looking to use some of its regular road funds to possibly move forward with that. So that's my understanding, right or wrong.
I know Jody told me the other day there was $133,000, but she wasn't sure where it is or what has happened to it. So that was why I was hoping to hear back from Chris. So,
It seems like this is related to, isn't this the same developer that never finished getting all the utilities and everything down,
yes,
like towards Ted Mickelson's house, and they had to pay to put those in separately?
right. So we got to have, according to Corbett, we got to have the gas, the electric, the telecommunication. I don't believe that was in there either. And then of course pavement and the rock line ditches, and there was supposedly $133,000 to do that, which I just don't see how that could even come close to being enough to do it. And then the next question is there in fact $133,000? So to be as candid as I can on this conversation, what jumps out at me is, do we have another Northview Circle situation?
Well, yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but my question, I guess, would be is what responsibility does the city have? Are we legally bound to do that? Or, because if we're not, I don't see how that's a priority for the city.
If we actually called the bond and collected the money, yeah, technically, we'd have to get to the bottom of it, but yeah, we could be on the hook for that, just like we were for Northview Circle. And
Mark,
yeah.
I thought that we had this discussion months ago related to this specific bond. And there was somebody from Summit Creek on as well that mentioned it. But I thought that during that discussion, it's been many months. I thought that at that time it was said that we did call that bond.
Yeah. So yeah, and I think, I have called the bond. From what I've been able to find out, we have actually called the bond, which again puts us in a position to complete the project. unfortunately, the project's what, 10, 12 years old, and the cost of, doubled and tripled since then. And that's the big challenge we got. So as we start talking about road priorities again, does Bear Hollow need to become part of the discussion? Another part of that is,
Mark,
yes,
I can work to find the answer to that, but
okay,
my understanding is that Bear Hollow, I mean, Steve Lauritsen was working on a deal with Summit Creek regarding Bear Hollow. I mean, this has been going on that long. So as far as I know, the city is not on the hook for the improvements that are needing to take place there, or at least we're like, for instance, I know that at least the Clarks had to put down money to have gas brought down to their area. Dominion Energy to pay them to bring the gas line down. And they had to bring it all the way down to the circle there. And then essentially they had to pay for that. And then I think there was some kind of a loan or something worked out with the city. So as other people build there, they'll have to pay back that loan as part of their fees. As far as electricity, that was the big gotcha, because it had water down there, but it was electricity that was the big gotcha, because SESD didn't want to do anything there. And so I think Summit Creek actually might have helped out with that, with getting the electricity all the way down to the end of the road. As far as replacing the road, we're not having to replace the road. It's really just talking about electricity and the gas line.
right, and completing the road. And David.
Well, what do you mean? What do you mean by completing the road?
There's no asphalt.
Because the road's complete.
As mine says, just dirt, isn't it? Because you got to put the utilities, asphalt, as well as all the rock line ditch work. I don't. think
No,
we're doing-
there's
You two are
asphalt.
you two are talking about two different roads. Dave, you're talking about the road that goes by the Clarks down to the cul-de-sac. Bear Hollow is the dirt road that connects that cul-de-sac over to Summit Creek Drive.
Okay, then that. Let me just say it this way. Summit Creek has recently presented an additional a plan that would roughly change Bear Hollow and its usage. And so as far as I know, that's part of Summit Creek's deal. That's not the city.
That was,
If that's the case, then we shouldn't even be talking about having the city participate in that.
well, and
That's correct.
that's the question. I know that both Jody and Corbett had stated the same thing, that Summit Creek, and Wayne's probably more involved in this than the rest of us as well. Summit Creek wanted to reevaluate on their plot amendment what they were going to do with Bear Hollow. And if Summit Creek is willing or prepared to take part, take ownership of that, that's great. But at the same time, if there was a bond that we called and we got some money in there, I just, we probably ought to know. And again, this is going to be staff.
I think the bond applied to Plat F, and I don't believe that included Bear Hollow. I don't believe Bear Hollow is a part of Plat F.
Okay. Then I guess we can leave that out of the discussion. I just didn't want to, what I would just want to make sure of is that as we start talking about moving forward with projects, that this doesn't come back and bite us. That's all I want to make sure, because I wasn't aware of any of this until last week. And then it seems like there was some different understandings of what was actually happening with that. So I just, I think as a city, especially staff and council level, we probably all ought to know exactly where we stand on that, and just not, I think, and I hope, stuff like that. That's just what I want to make sure. This is more as a resident than as a committee member, that, we all understand exactly where we stand as far as the finances on that go. So, moving on to other items of discussion then, we've got, like I said, close to $700,000 left over from this, from the bond and the budget that we need to, since we're not going to be doing the other projects that we originally intended, you know, what are some of the priorities we look at? You know, the cul-de-sacs are obviously one area that was brought up. I know that, you know, West Loafer is still hanging out there. You know, where do we want to put that on the list, and what would be the cost to complete that? And what are the developers' intents on that? My understanding is they're ready to move forward, or at least looking at moving forward on that. But at the same time, when I saw the plat amendment at the public hearing the other day, it almost looked like they did a cul-de-sac and left that out. I'm not quite sure what their plans were on that. So, you know, what other items do we need to look at as far as, you know, road work? I guess would be or road projects. That would be, you know.
Mark, I'm not understanding when you say there's $700,000 left over. I mean, I thought this bond money that the city got was pretty much committed through one project or another, that there wasn't, when you use the term leftover, I'm a little confused or puzzled by that.
Leftover is probably a bad choice of words. As of right now, there's unspent money. That money was originally going to be spent on Lower Oak, West Loafer, and Broad Hollow. Or excuse me, not West Loafer, East Spring and Broad Hollow. But because the council chose to go ahead and borrow some extra money to complete the road projects, those 3 road projects using the water fund, because we couldn't combine the 2 projects together. We'd had to gone out and did 2 separate biddings, which would have meant 2 contractors, and cost wise, it would have been a lot different. The council went ahead and borrowed some extra money on the road project, or on the water project, to complete the roads, which now leads that money that we were going to spend on the roads to be spent elsewhere. And that's where we're at.
David, is that your understanding too? I had heard that this second borrowing money of water money has not been consummated yet, and it may not happen until next year. Can you shed any light on that? Am I confused? David Pratt?
Sorry, I had muted myself. The $400,000, it was my understanding that was almost a done deal. So to increase our current water bond by $400,000, I think that was, anyway, at least as we're looking at the budget, we're kind of planning on that. However, I'm kind of with you. I wouldn't count those chickens before they hatch. I believe that, again, this is a Ted issue. He was the one who arranged for that, and I think that they were going to approve it in one of their upcoming meetings, but I don't know what the date behind that was. As far as having extra money and having the ability to do extra projects, this is me speaking, and my gut tells me that by the time we do all of the fixing of the roads that got torn up by the water project, and even with the extra $400,000, I think our roads money will likely be exhausted before we get to any additional projects.
David and Mark, can I ask a question in that regard? Because I know that as I watch the water project, obviously they're tearing up a certain portion of the road to put the pipe in certain places, and that will be covered under the water, right? But that's
covered under the project.
That's right. Okay. So when you're saying to fix the roads, are you also talking basically replacing the road, those that are going to be replaced anyway at the same time to reduce cost? Or are we basically going to have to go and tear the whole road up, even the portion that was fixed under the water project at, next year or 2 years from now?
I'm hopeful that we're not going to have to do that, but there have been some spots, and specifically some of the cul-de-sacs that come off of Oak, that have experienced some pretty substantial destruction.
Yeah, that's right. That's right at the intersection of Oak. Is that correct?
Well, there's a couple of places.
Because we have to avoid a lot of those when we're out plowing. And
Yeah.
so, okay.
Well, for
Anyway.
example, not Valley View, the circle below Valley View where they stored all the pipe and everything. And they were bringing in all the equipment to move the pipe to different, to complete the project. There was no budget to repair the road on that cul-de-sac. And I'm sorry, the name just escapes me. It's on the tip of my tongue. So there's money in there to do the patch over the top of the water line, but the rest of the road was just chewed up by, front end loaders and bucket trucks and whatnot getting in there to get the equipment. And so there's no money in the budget, water budget to repair the rest of that road. So one of the options is to say, okay, let's use the leftover bond money or the unexpended bond money to complete that cul-de-sac. So essentially,
Now, no, Mark, I don't want to be argumentative, so don't take this wrong. There's no houses in that cul-de-sac. And across the road from me, there's basically a gravel pit where there's actual homes that have been a gravel pit for the last 10 years. I don't think I would prioritize fixing a cul-de-sac where there is no homes over a cul-de-sac that has been waiting for a long time.
and that's great. That's why we want to have the discussion. So that was just, like I said, that those cul-de-sacs were just one item that was brought up. Is this cul-de-sac you're talking about is another item we can put on the list and talk about?
I think it already is. I'm just saying that I don't even think that cul-de-sac that's on the list already has been prioritized because it's just, there's only so much money, right? I'm just
Correct.
concerned that we're talking about fixing yet again another set of cul-de-sacs that weren't even on the original list with money that as of yet, I don't think we even have anyway. Because otherwise, shouldn't we come down the list that we currently have already?
Well, yeah, and the list we had already was kind of, we looked at, if I remember right, I don't have the list in front of me, but the original list included the two projects that we have substantial completion on now, which were the Mitchell project, which we chose to do to avoid litigation, and Northview Circle, which we also selected as a priority to, again, avoid litigation. Then we looked at East Spring and Lower Oak, which those two projects have not been completed yet, because prior to starting those projects, we had the water line issue jump up and bite us. And then as part of the water line cost, we were able to look at including Broad Hollow in that. That was the original list of projects we wanted to do. And then I think West Lofer sat down there on the priority list. And I cannot remember what was below West Lofer on the priority list, if there was anything at all, to be honest.
So Mark, two questions. One, can we get a copy of this list? And two, what were the criteria used to put these projects on there?
The biggest priority, like I said, the priority for the criteria for the two projects we completed was the litigation issue. So I think we resolved those, hopefully. And the others was the need. Well, Spring was going to be done anyway. Originally, Spring was going to have a new water line put underneath it. We had all the material in place. And I think the fires kind of postponed that project. So Spring was just added back to the list because we were going to put water line that we had already scheduled to do anyway. So that's why Spring was added to the list. And then Lower Oak was added to the list just because the road was in such bad shape and the amount of traffic that was on it. Those were the criteria for those two. And then Broad Hollow again was added as part of the water project because it was in the same condition as Spring was. If that's the way I recollect it. I can double check as we went through the priority list. So I mean, at this point, what other items can we do? I mean, another option we have here, guys, as we start looking at it, when I say we, the city has, they can just repay the bond and do nothing. That's another option.
I think depends on a couple of things. One is how much money are we going to have next year to do maintenance on? Is that in jeopardy with our budget projections, or if it is, that needs to be factored into what we're talking about here as well. And let me share with you another, I don't want to call it a minor issue because it's not, but there's another $4,000 that the city's going to need to spend in Northview Circle. What happened was the electrical lines never got pulled from the primary transformer, the boxes that hold the primary lines from there to the individual lots. When the city put that out to bid, the guy who bid on it, the work that he has done for other cities, those cities have done that work. He laid the conduit, he's put the conduit in, but the electrical lines need to be pulled from those transmission boxes to the lots. Corbett has had a preliminary talk with SESD, who takes the line to the transformer box, and that's the extent of what they normally do. And Corbett is trying to work a deal with them where if the city buys the wire, i.e. $4,000, trying to get them to volunteer the labor to pull the wire from those transformer boxes to the lots. So I just making everybody aware of that money likely come out of the same budget category as the work that was done on Northview Circle. I think, and maybe that is what Jody's talking about, that there's $133,000 left in that general category. So just again, I think the city can cover that, but I just mentioned that to everybody here so that you're aware of that.
Yeah, I know that when we talked about the completion of Northview, that was a couple, 3 weeks ago, we discussed that there was probably going to be some more charges on Northview. I think there was like 370 to date from Northview that has been billed and invoiced. And there was probably going to be another 25 to 30,000 that is still to come in. And so we kind of rounded that up to 400,000. I think that 4,000 you described plus pulling at cost could be incorporated into that contingency. And it may be a little bit more. So, but we when we figured it, according to Chris, what we had left was about $650 something thousand. Find my notes here. And so there's still some money in there. So we still got, probably, just a safe yield, I'm just going to say of about $600,000 that we can use. We may have a little bit more of that, giving ourselves some contingency for items like you just described, Wayne.
Okay.
So, and again, I guess what we can do is start prioritizing the projects and then see how much money we have based on what happens with this bond and budget. But you did bring up a good point. We started talking about earlier, and then I'll kind of back off and let everybody open it up for discussion. Dave Peterson did talk about, the maintenance items that we have, how much money do we have in the current budget and how much money is going to be budgeted in next year's budget. Do we have to take care of that? And are we going to need to tap into some of this extra money that's in the road funds now to complete just operational cost?
Let me make one other statement. You mentioned maybe paying off a portion of the bond early. I don't think that's such a wise idea, simply because even getting the bond has some pretty significant costs to it, like $20,000 to $40,000 for this size of bond. It's based on a percentage of the bond. So I can't see why we would get money on a loan, have the charges, and then not use the loan, especially when we still have projects that need to be done.
Yeah, especially at 3%, and inflation is going to be much more than 3%. I agree. I agree. We shouldn't pay it back. I just thrown that out there as just an option to discuss. As you know, there's several different opinions on what to do with this money, or could very well be. That was just, I agree. I wouldn't want to give it back at this point either.
Well, I think Corbett and Ted are critical to this conversation and decisions as we go forward with in looking at the knowledge that they have and the expertise as well around the city of where work needs to be done and should be done. I'd be hesitant to, I mean, we can have a general discussion about things, but I'd be hesitant to make any decisions tonight without their input.
Okay, so do we just want to go ahead and maybe table this discussion and then get with Corbett and maybe Ted and say, hey, look, here's where we're at. How do we want to move forward? And again, I know that Corbett's position, he made it pretty clear to me, is he'd like to finish those cul-de-sacs off of Oak Drive. I know for a fact that's where his position is, but then we do need to consider some of the other subdivisions like Dave brought up over there, that, what else needs to be done. So at this point, yeah, I recommend, let's go ahead, table this discussion. We'll put it up on the next meeting, and between now and then, maybe we have if we have to have another meeting a little bit between now and then to talk about it, but let's get some suggestions from staff and go from there.
We can share information too with email between now and whenever we meet again. I guess hearing all the budget issues that I do, I'm a little surprised that there's maybe $600,000 left this year in this year's budget that's available for road funds. But again,
those are the numbers I got from Chris about 2 weeks ago.
okay.
So Mark, I think it's a wise idea to wait until we have Ted and Corbett. But I guess I'd kind of echoed Dave, what he said earlier, in that if we already have a list of some prioritized projects, why would we throw these cul-de-sacs above them? Why not go down the prioritized list that's already been created?
Agree. And the comment I got from Corbett on that is because before the water project, before we started the water project, the cul-de-sacs weren't an issue. They only became an issue because we pretty much destroyed them putting the water line in.
Hey, Mark, so here's a question. So if that's the logic, then is the water fund paying for it? Because I thought we were talking about a specific road budget. And if we want to add these cul-de-sacs to, and, look at them and rate them like some of the other areas in the city, that's what we should do. We should add them to the list and then rate them.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But it's not going to be paid for under the water budget. That's a different matter, right?
Well, they won't be paid for under the water budget, because the only part that will be paid for under the water budget again is the actual overlay over the top of the pipe. So that 3 to 4 feet that is cut up to put the water line is the only thing that will be covered. So you'll have that strip down the side or down the middle of the road, depending on where the water line is. And then you'll have that new road, then you'll have the cut where it ties into the existing road. So you'll have the new pavement mixed in with the older pavement. And again, I wish Corbett was here because he could explain his position better than I would. And his concern is you'll have a nice strip of good road, then you'll have all the other road crumbled and destroyed because of all the equipment that was in there that took out the road, which is not considered into the repair cost of the water line. And he's concerned that the residents on there are expecting the road to be in as good a shape after the water project as they are before the water project. And
I'd say the best thing to do is just, we add them to the list and grade them like all the rest of the roads.
Yeah, and go from there. I agree.
I'd be surprised if there's not some liability on the company that comes in and does that and destroys our roads in the process, that the city would seem to have some recourse for the damage that they have done. And on top of that, if it's been created as a result of the water project, that at least some of that money couldn't be used to try to make it whole. But that's me.
Yeah, Wayne, I think that depend on their contract and also what we as the city has done. If Corbett indicated to them that they could use the end of that cul-de-sac for storage and directed them to do so, then I think that may take
It's
away
gonna
some of
be
that
a similar,
liability.
it's gonna be similar to the Deep Forest road when we did, when the mitigation project was hauling all the asphalt or all the spoils up Deep Forest, and they just, they damaged that road. It's gonna be kind of a similar situation as what happened on Deep Forest there and part of Eagle Nest. It's, the road was already in good shape. And the simple fact that it wasn't built to design isn't the contractor's fault. It's ours. I think it's just.
And Mark, I'm not saying that we should kick the can down the road. I just say, let's add them to the list. Let's grade them. Because right now, that cul-de-sac, there is no homes on it.
He's talking about.
And, yeah,
He's
so that's
talking
all
about-
I'm saying is we should just add it to the list. Let's grade it with everything else. And then, if we have budget, let's come down further down the list.
Perfect. I couldn't agree more. Okay. So at this point, I'll go ahead and get with Ted and Corbett and go for there and just, we'll just keep the emails going. So, and then try and address this in the May's meeting. Go from there. So, and along David's line, just, I agree that while giving the money back may be an option, it's probably not a viable option.
Okay, can I just make a quick comment? And I realize it's a little bit of a side comment here. Who is actually producing the contracts with these contractors? Who's producing the contracts that allows these contractors to mess up our roads without any legal recourse to get the money back? What motivation do they have to not screw up our roads?
Do not know the answer to that.
I mean, it seems to me that these are substantial enough sums of money that it would behoove us, it would be in our best interest to either get once again, same comment earlier, to get a city manager, someone who could actually monitor what's going on with the power to financially hold these people responsible. I mean, we look at the project here on Oak Drive, and it's not getting the attention it needs. I mean, it's moving, but it's moving very slowly. And it's, I mean, just the amount of damage they did to the edge of my road is pretty substantial. I have to go in there and I'll have to put a lot of time in. They're doing all their landscaping with a backhoe. So, I mean, there's not a lot that I can do to get recourse on that. And I see similar situations going on throughout the city where they'll do something, they'll create a problem, they'll take home their profit, but they'll leave the city holding the bag to repair the damage that they've done. Why can't we get someone involved in the contract making? We don't lease the contract unless there are some liquidated damages in there for problems they create.
I agree. I think that's a great question, David. And it reminds me of the one that Wayne just talked about a minute ago, where the contractor put in the conduit for the electricity on North Villasuco, but didn't pull the wire. I mean, that should have been in the scope of work. Someone should have reviewed the contract and made sure that what we expected was in the contract. So I agree.
Right.
I think there's a lot of work that could be done in general on our contracts with these.
And to be fair, we're a committee of volunteers. And the reality is that when you're a volunteer, you do the best you can and you eyeball it and say, well, that's pretty much good enough. I think that there needs to be someone who is responsible financially to make sure that these contracts get put in place. I believe that we should not be letting monies out or making payments on any work done until a formal inspection's done. I don't believe that inspections are taking place anymore, are they?
No, they're taken place by our engineers, our city engineers.
Okay, thank you, Wayne.
So let me kind of just, if Ted was here, he could probably defend this a lot better than I can, but Ted, again, is not with us tonight. The way that, normally the process works is the city, will identify a project, usually through the use of an engineer, and the engineer will go ahead with their experience and they will design the project. They will present the cost estimates and they'll use their experience to make sure that everything that needs to be done gets done and it is put onto the bid sheets. And then they send that out to bids with those items on it. And then of course, the contractors that want to bid on the project will bid on the project based on that bid sheet. And they will bid the line items to that bid sheet. Obviously, there's always going to be some change orders and some adjustments to that bid sheet, but for the most part, that bid sheet is done. And in that line item, there's going to be the engineering costs, you know, the contingencies, the inspections and stuff like that, and to the contract. So normally, yes, the engineering firm that does the project for us, manages the project for us. In this case, it's going to be Ted's company, and then he's also working with our engineer. Why can't I think of LEI? And they're working together to ensure that everything gets done the way it was designed to.
Hey, Mark, can I ask a question then? Because
Sure.
I wonder if we're making some assumptions that the contractor's not liable. Because, I mean, have we reviewed the contracts to make sure that they're not? Because what if
Well,
they actually are?
I know that, and it might be, that's what I say, Ted could be in a better position to do that. But they have weekly contract, they have weekly meetings, update meetings that I have been attending. And this has been talked about and in the line item, and from everything I understand.
So here's an example. When the fiber went in, and it just so happened that it caused a lot of damage to the road because they did it during the winter and it created lots of sort of weakening of the sides of the roads. Well, because of that, I actually went around and documented it all. There was actually some language in their contract. They didn't like it. They had to come back and fix it all. There was 100 and some odd spots that they had to come back and physically fix. So I'm not so sure that the contractors that are currently doing this aren't on the hook to fix this stuff.
Well, to be
Well,
honest,
and
so as an engineer, and I would let out contracts. So like I said, in doing these projects, I've been involved in contract language in times past. My opinion is that if it's not in the contract, then that's negligence on the engineering standpoint. Then, one way or the other, I'm not aware of any legitimate contract in a private sector where every bit of responsibility isn't covered. And if it's not covered in the specs, then that's on the engineering firm for negligence. If the contractor didn't follow through, then that's on them. Then we need to pursue that way. In any case, I don't believe it should ever fall to the citizens to pick up for someone's either negligence or someone's inability to work within a reasonable amount of wear and tear on the roads without putting a substantial cost back on the city.
I will also say that this is a fairly recent change, where we have actually been hiring engineering firms to manage the projects instead of us self-managing it. It just became way too much for Corbett to try and manage. But we did do Woodland Hills Drive. That was all city managed. The upper part of Oak, that was all city managed. The West Loafer putting in the sewer line, that was all city managed. But it was because of some of the problems that we experienced with those projects that we made the switch to where Northview Circle was all managed by LEI. It costs us a little bit more to do it that way, but it also allows us to have somebody on the hook when something goes wrong.
So David, let me ask you a question on this, and I know it's kind of water under the bridge, but just for laughs and giggles, humor me, please. Have we looked at the feasibility of saying, okay, Corbett, you do a great job. We want to keep you to 40 hours. We're not going to do you 80 hours because we're not getting as good as you are. We're not getting the most bang for the buck because human nature wears down. We're not getting 80 hours worth of work out of you. We looked at the feasibility of hiring 1 or 2 more people to help Corbett manage projects as opposed to paying the premium for an engineering firm to come in and manage them.
So that was part of the reason why Craig got hired initially, was to take off some of the load from Corbett, because originally Corbett was the only guy. Then we hired Craig. Jody's now full-time. But honestly, if things continue the way they have been going, we probably need 3 or 4 more full-time people. We've got certain citizens that are just being super demanding on the city. And when I say super, I mean that in monstrous, big, holy cow kind of ways.
I understand.
So, and it has nothing to do with roads.
I understand.
What my preference is, because as Corbett has said multiple times, he's not an engineer. He is a very good manager of the projects, and he does save the city tons of money. But I personally would rather have a road, when we decide to do a road, that we actually do the engineering, we do the design, and that we then do it right. And even if that means delaying by a year, I'm okay with that, because I'd rather get the road done correctly rather than just kind of slapping some asphalt down.
And
And
thank you,
David,
thank
I
you
also
for
might
addressing
add to
that,
that.
David.
Oops.
I appreciate you addressing that. I think the main impetus here is, here on the committee, we have a lot of people who really want to do a good job here in the city. We want to do the citizens right, and all of us are volunteers. And I think we're feeling a bit like we're not spending our money the best way possible, given the constraints of the budgets that we're dealing with. And if we need to make some changes in how the city government is running, or how the hiring practices go, all we can do is just make recommendations. And I would strongly recommend that, in spite of as good as the people have done thus far, we really do need to take some of the burden off, because it's just human nature to get worn down, no matter who we are. And I would agree that I would rather wait and do it right than not do it, than do a horrible job in the first place. I think that's the main motivation for speaking up this way. And I'm really not trying to be combative. I want to find solutions that we get the most efficiency, the best possible results for the money we spend as a city. So thanks for listening.
Yeah, no problem. And I would also point out that that's part of the reason why VanCon is the one doing the water project. That's part of the reason why Jones and DeMille did the design before we did the water project. I mean, I would say every project we've done over the last 2 years has been done using this new model that's more along the lines of what you're asking for.
Okay, one other thing, one other comment I was gonna add to that is, we also, when I say we, the city council approved, again, that was based on our recommendation, and I also think the planning commission contributed to that, that any projects we do going forward will be done under the new APPA standard, which, is going to add cost to all the projects we do, but at the same time, it's also going to bring the quality there that we may not have been getting in the past. So, did I lose everybody?
No, we're here.
Oh, good. It went real quiet all of a sudden.
We're just all on mute.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So, okay, so I'll go ahead and start with staff and engineering. Probably tomorrow, I'll get back with them, and next week when they all get back from Easter break. And we'll try and just start working on project updates to have a better idea what we want to do at our May meeting. So that being said, are there any other items to talk about? Well, I guess if we're done discussing the possible recommendations for priority item number 6, if we're done there, is there anything else on any other items under item 7 on the agenda?
Mark, a couple of things. I'd like to get an update from Chris Helvey about how much budget money is left this year that we have for roads, so that we get that buttoned down. We know we've got it. oftentimes money can disappear in a budget process where there's needs elsewhere. And I think we need to pin that down if we're going to be looking at establishing some priorities and criteria to know.
I did
Yes,
find the number there, Wayne. So we had $20,000 in the road maintenance budget,
For last year?
and for the
Well, for
year
this-
that we are currently in,
This year, I'm sorry, okay.
and we've spent 12,000 of that.
We've got eight.
So we've got $8,000 left.
okay, and as to this $600,000, then let's get that pinned down and make sure that that money is available for, for major road.
Yeah, that money it's in a capital fund, so it can't really be moved around, nor would it be. What the operational money has to be zeroed out at the end of the year. So that's where money can get moved in a funny way. But the bond money is in a capital improvements fund and it won't be moved.
Okay. Thank you. Excuse me, one last thing. The city, we haven't done a really good job on easements. There are issues with several easements that, and there's nobody maybe really other than Corbett. I know Dave Pratt has worked a little bit in a couple of areas where we've needed easements, but we've got some easement issues on the road going up to the water tanks. The city is using someone else's property that the city needs to get an easement from that crosses that road. The dirt road goes up there. And I don't have any best practices or suggestions, but I think it's something that I think there is a need there to do some follow-up and work on it and kind of be a mover to make sure that that gets addressed, becoming more critical as that easement now it's used in a lot by those on the trail going up to the switchbacks to get there. As questions of liability comes into play. If there's an injury on there and maybe the city doesn't have the required easement that we have or that we're using and those sorts of things. So I just throw that out there. I don't know where else it would fit within these committees that have been set up, but it's something that I do think needs some attention, maybe somebody who can research some things a little bit there. And so we get a full picture of what's required. And it wouldn't necessarily be us, it'd likely be a city councilman who maybe goes to the individual whose property it's on and has discussions with them about giving an easement to the city or how much they want for that easement. But these are things that have been pending for years and haven't ever been fully addressed or resolved as they should have been. So I just mentioned that. I don't know what your views are, but just throw it out there.
Well, and that's a really good subject to bring up. And you're right, I don't exactly know where it falls. The specific easement you're talking about on that one is we have a city easement for city vehicles. So as long as they're owned by the city, we can go up there just fine.
Yes.
And hikers can go up there. But any other motorized vehicles are not allowed on that road, according to our easement. And I think that's the easement that you're talking about that we need to try and get.
So somebody out playing their ATV or something like that is not allowed on that easement at this time. Is that your understanding there, David?
That's right.
Okay,
So
And there's-
ATVs technically cannot go up to the switchbacks.
And there's an easement that crosses Terry Machado's property that the city does not have, but we need to get unless we change the road and direct it otherwise. So that's part of that same issue.
Another great example, quite frankly, is West Loafer. So when we started dumping dirt off the side of that road, that dirt went on to Glenn Anderson and what was formerly Mick Hill's property. And we don't have an easement for that to steal their property. And so what we need to do is we need to get a grading easement in place for those properties. Which they're willing to do, but we kind of killed that discussion by not doing the road.
Well, I do know back, kind of back circling around, I guess is the new vogue word for it. Circling back onto that, I know that Corbett had in discussion about purchasing some field easements there and then selling the, instead of having developers take the dirt off road or out of town to offsite, actually having them filled it there and we can actually get our fill and actually charge them to dump it there. We did put a committee together that consisted of David and David, just talking before the meeting, and that kind of died on the vine to what we were doing on that. So I think, David, if you can bring me up to speed on that, you saying that the council kind of just didn't really like the idea and we just dismissed it. I may have said that all wrong. So if you could please state what you said to me earlier, I'd appreciate it.
Are we talking? Oh, is this David Stones or?
David Peterson. I'm sorry, it's three Davids. I'm so sorry. Yeah, David Peterson.
Well, I didn't say that the committee or that the city council said that. What I was saying was based on the discussions we had been having in our committee, and then based on some comments that I'd had with Ted, I don't believe that I got the feeling that the project had lost favor in terms of the city being willing to manage the both the quality of the dirt that would be brought in as well as the costs. You know, we had no real solutions for monitoring how people would be charging us.
I'd heard that, let me add a comment. I'd heard too that one of the property owners up there, an individual who had, Corbett had discussed some swapping with him, that fell through. And
Yes.
that may have had an effect of kind of killing some of this project too, David.
Correct. And I do remember that comment as well, to where he had, that was right toward the end of the meeting, if I remember correctly, where he said, yeah, we thought we were going to do this. That's no longer going to be the case. And once again, it got to the point where I felt like it was dead in the water, for lack of a better description. And so I haven't pushed forward on that at all until I actually get the idea that the city council wants to investigate that further. I'm more than happy to do so. But it seemed to me that it was not being aggressively supported, shall I say.
Well, so I'll just give you my perspective. I don't think it had anything to do with aggressive or not aggressively supported. There was engineering work that had to be done, and Ted was working on that engineering work to determine whether it was even feasible. And so we can't really support something until we know whether it's feasible or not.
Okay. So I suppose I can follow through with Ted and find out what the level of engineering he's done. Last time I checked, they were concerned whether or not the soil in question was even feasible for building the berm that would meet the compaction standards. So that was one of the things that I felt was one of the issues that we had come into and bumped up against. But I don't know if he has pursued with that any further. I will call him and find out, and I'll report on our next meeting. I'm done if anyone's wanting to talk.
Yeah, I just kind of I just didn't want to cut in if nobody else was going to speak. So So what, I guess what we want to do is we want to follow up on what can be done on West Loafer as far as fill, as far as proceeding with continuing with an easement. We would obviously have to purchase an easement from, I forget, the resident would be on the north side or the west side, depending on the direction. And then we have a new property owner on the other side of the street, or do we at this point? I know that he had moved out, whether he sold his property or not, I'm still not sure of, but we
He
would
sold
also-
it, Mark.
Okay, so we would have to deal with the new property owner on that as well, see what their position is on it. And yeah, this project is going to be a lot of things. Cheap won't be one of them.
Now, just to clarify too, that's tied into Summit Creek. Because part of that road goes over into Summit Creek. And there was a point in time a while back where Summit Creek wasn't interested in pursuing that at that time. So that's not something that the economy of scale for the city to pursue by itself without joining with Summit Creek in finishing that connecting road, so to speak. So that's another element that needs to be taken into consideration when the time comes.
So I did get an email from Jody that was forwarded to, that Chris had forwarded back on it. He said in it, I can't find it. Let me see if I can find it real quick. He said that, when I say he, Chris said that he had talked with the gentleman from Summit Creek. I'm sorry, I forget his name.
Steve Dickert?
Steve, and that they were ready to start moving forward on Loafer Drive. So that was one of the things that was stated in an email I got. I'm trying to find it here, so bear with me. Yeah, and so I don't know exactly where that's going to go, and that may be something we need to discuss again. I had a thought. I was thinking out loud to Jody the other day, and she kind of sent some emails out that what I was thinking. I probably shouldn't even what I was thinking again was thinking out loud. So I probably just ought to keep my thoughts to myself on that. But essentially, what I was thinking was, would it benefit the city? Because I think we can all agree right now that it is an eyesore and something needs to be done to improve that. It's just I hate to see that representing what what Woodland Hills looks like. So something needs to be done to improve that. And my thought the other day where I was talking with Jody was, can we convert it into some sort of at least some sort of a trailhead or something like that to at least, make it look usable to some degree without actually completing it as a road at this time. That was kind of the thought I come up. Eventually it may need to be a road at this point, depending on what Summit Creek wants to do. That's something that's way out of my league, but I was just kind of more speaking as a resident at the time that, yeah, it would be nice to do something to make that look a little better.
So do we have a list of contacts we would talk to at Summit Creek? And do we know who's talking with them?
Yeah, there's basically two individuals, sometimes a third that we deal with Summit Creek. One is an on-site project manager, so to speak, who's there all during the day, and that's his job, and we work closely with him. Just for your information, Steve Dickert, he kind of represents the investors arm of Summit Creek. So any final say on things, it's in his court to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, it was Ben that he was talking to, that Chris was talking to is Ben.
Okay, Ben is kind of the project manager on site, but he takes all of his orders from Steve Dickert.
So, okay, I guess at this point, let me get started off. I can spend some time. Let me get back to the easement thing that Wayne, you were talking about a minute ago. In my former life, when you do projects, especially water projects, the funding agencies, in the case, Drinking Water Board, they want to make sure that all the utilities they're working with are in easements. So we had to go back and do a lot of research and make sure that the entire system was within an easement. So I've had some experience doing that. I didn't actually do the work, but I had my assistant do it, but I communicated with her on a regular basis on getting that done. So I'm in a position, Wayne, if you want, that I can maybe work with you a little bit on trying to identify some of these easements. Had some experience doing that in the past. Not something that I would say, I'd almost rather have root canal without Novocaine than to do that, but it's something I can help you do if you want. And I would volunteer to do that.
Okay, appreciate that. We'll keep it in mind. Now, when we do subdivisions, those easements are covered. LEI make sure that whatever utility easements are needed, et cetera. So it's just some of these oddball things that have been hanging around for years and years that have never been fully addressed. So we may solicit your help in trying to move some of those forward, Mark. Thank you.
Okay. I'll be willing to do my best on that, which may be not even close to enough. So, okay, if there's no other items, let's move on to the next meeting date, which would be April, where's my calendar?
May
Actually, I said April, I meant May.
4th.
Yeah, it looks like May 4th. Let me see. Am I going to be somewhere on May 4th? No, I'll be gone the next week, the 11th. Yeah, May 4th works for me.
Works
So
for me.
May 4th, that would be Tuesday, May 4th at 6 PM. Hopefully we'll have a little bit more information on these on road priorities and the actual funding amount. And that will probably be the primary discussion for that. And then, of course, updates for the water project is where we're at on that.
Hey,
So-
Mark, could you do a favor and resurrect that priority list that we did a number of months ago with road projects and their projected costs on that? I think that'd be helpful to us.
Sure thing.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. If there's nothing else, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion for adjournment.
I motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, okay. Who made the motion?
David Stones.
Dave Stone, and the second?
Jeremy.
Jeremy, okay. Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, folks, thanks. Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
See
you
ya.
too. Bye.
Thank you.